Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Nice to see everyone come to this important lecture. It gives me great pleasure to have you here today to not only hear Carrie Mae Weems, but also to see this wonderful exhibition. Thank you for supporting the museum, and thank you for spending your afternoon with us. With this talk and its associated exhibition, the Portland Art Museum builds upon its 100-plus year history of presenting photography as art. Although obvious today, celebrating photography as a form of artistic expression early in the 20th century distinguished this museum, facilitating a number of important exhibitions as well as acquisitions. Carrie Mae Weems' 3 decades of photography and video builds upon the museum's early commitments to photography and furthers our photographic aspirations. Before I introduce Dr. Julia Dolan, our minor white curator of photography, I would like to acknowledge Dr. Susan Edwards, director of the Friss Center in Nashville, Tennessee, which is the organizing institution for Carrie Mae Weems' 3 decades of photography and video. Thank you, Susan, for being here, and thank you for your leadership efforts in creating this exhibition. Thank you, Susan. Dr. Julia Dolan was appointed the minor white curator of photography in 2010. Before her appointment in Portland, she held positions at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Addison Gallery of American Art, as well as the Harvard University's Fogg Art Museum. Julia received her doctorate in art history from Boston University and her master's degree from Penn State University. Julia has, for the last 2 years, overseen the development and evolution of the photography department here, acquiring important works, curating significant exhibitions, leading our photography council, as well as ensuring the significant presentation of Carrie Mae Weems. It gives me great pleasure this afternoon to welcome Dr. Julia Dolan to the podium, who will introduce Carrie. Dr. Julia.
Thank you so much, Brian. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the Portland Art Museum's inaugural Arnold Newman Distinguished Lecture in Photography. Before I introduce our esteemed guest, I would like to thank the Arnold and Augusta Newman Foundation for their incredibly generous support of this event. Because of the Foundation's gift, the museum will be able to host 5 annual photography lectures through 2017, which is the museum's 125th anniversary year. Somewhere in this crowd of approximately 700 people is David Newman, Arnold and Augusta's son. David, thank you so much for attending. Stand, please. Hello. David, thank you so much for attending. Thank you to your brother, Eric, and thank you to your family's foundation for this wonderful opportunity to bring distinguished photography luminaries to Portland. And I'd say we are starting things off with quite a bang. I am grateful to the many sponsors of this exhibition, including our major sponsors, the Paul G. Allen Family Foundation and the Henry L. Hillman Foundation, as well as additional sponsors including the Regional Arts and Culture Council, the Oregon Cultural Trust, the Lewis and Virginia Clemente Foundation, Sarah Miller Meggs and Andrew Meggs, Laura S. Meyer, Tony and Celia Wiebe, Dr. Baron Barnett and Delia Busher, Jim Licey and Cynthia Kirk, the Acorn Fund of the Oregon Community Foundation, the Scanner, and the members of the Portland Art Museum's Photography Council. I would also like to thank Katie Delmay, curator at the Friss Center for the Visual Arts in Nashville, for curating the incredible exhibition, Carrie Mae Weems, 3 Decades of Photography and Video. Her scholarly tenacity and vision resulted in a masterpiece exhibition that we are honored to host here in Portland. Katie cannot be with us today because she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl just 10 days ago, but we celebrate her achievement and wish her the best. And as Brian welcomed her, I am so pleased that Dr. Susan Edwards, Executive Director of the Friss Center, is here with us today. Welcome, Susan, and thank you for your leadership in this exhibition effort. And now, it is my great privilege to introduce our distinguished guest, Carrie Mae Weems. Ms. Weems was born and raised right here in Portland, began to photograph in her early 20s, and received her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from the California Institute of the Arts. She received a Master of Fine Arts degree from the University of California, San Diego, and conducted graduate study in folklore at the University of California, Berkeley. Throughout the past 30 years, her work has been the subject of more than 50 solo exhibitions at such institutions as the Art Institute of Chicago, the High Museum of Art, the National Museum of Women in the Arts, the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, Boston's Institute of Contemporary Art, as well as our own Portland Art Museum, which hosted her major survey exhibition back in 1994. Ms. Weems's photographs have been collected by more than 40 public institutions, including New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the National Gallery of Canada, Los Angeles County Museum of Art, Photo Museum Winterthur in Switzerland, and, of course, the Portland Art Museum. I would argue, however, that we don't have enough of her work, so if anyone would like to help me acquire more, please speak to me after today's event. Ms. Weems is the recipient of an honorary degree from Colgate University, an honorary doctorate from Smith College, a National Endowment for the Arts Visual Arts Grant, the Pollock Krasner Foundation Grant in Photography, as well as the Joseph H. Hazen Rome Prize Fellowship at the American Academy in Rome, and has served as artist in residence at many institutions, including the Rhode Island School of Design, the Art Institute of Chicago, Cité des Arts in Paris, Western Washington University, Wellesley College, and Syracuse University. And finally, in 2012, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton honored Ms. Weems with the first U.S. Department of State Medal of Arts Award. There are many more honors that I could tell you about, but I will stop here lest I go in far too long. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our 2013 Arnold Newman Distinguished Lecturer in Photography, Carrie Mae Weems.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And with all of that, I am still poor as a church mouse. I am broke. But we are lucky. I am fortunate. I am so honored. I'm so grateful to be here today. And I'm really thankful to all of you. This is Super Bowl Sunday. You know, and you should be very, very proud of this this museum, the Portland Museum of Art. I mean, they have pulled out all the stops. What an institution. I have shown in museums around the world, and I don't think that I have ever had an exhibition so beautifully organized, so beautifully presented, so eloquently mapped out. It's absolutely extraordinary. And so I want to give the museum a round of applause. Brian, thank you. Bruce, thank you. The amazing Dr. Dolan, thank you. Susan Edwards, thank you. Katie Dalmay at the Frist, thank you for the honor. There are a number of extraordinary artists working in the world. I don't necessarily consider myself one of them. So I feel very blessed, really, to be standing before you today. What I thought that I would do, I'm not going to take up a whole lot of your time because I know that you have other things to do. We're going to be here maybe for just about an hour and a half, and at the end of it, I thought maybe we would take some question and answer, if you're interested in doing that. And but I thought today that I wanted to start actually with a short video clip that is from one of my latest bodies of work called Lincoln, Lonnie, and Me. When I was a little girl, growing up here in Portland, living across the street from my Aunt Katie, who's right here, and Eddie Dahl, my cousin, who's sitting right here in the first row, I think there was a centennial event. And I can remember being about 5 years old, and I came stumbling down the stairs one afternoon. It was on a Saturday or a Sunday, and there was a Lincoln impersonator in my living room. And over the years, I've been really interested in Lincoln. And I didn't realize really that this is the anniversary of Lincoln, celebration of Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation. But I started talking to Lincoln impersonators in the last couple of years and chatting with them on the phone, and finally decided to do this small piece, and I thought that we would start with that this evening. So, AV man, hit it. We'll watch just a few minutes of it and we'll come back to it later. And can we lower the house lights? Can we lower the lights? Is it possible?
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now, we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived, so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on the great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who gave their lives so that the nation might live. In a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far beyond our poor power to add or to detract. unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far, so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here, dedicated to the task remaining before us, the task before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth for freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth.
If you're speaking about certain situations, when I understand, I generally go into a situation knowing that there's no change that'll happen. At this particular point in my life,
And that's the beginning of Lonnie. And now let's switch to the slides. Thank you. So over the last few years, many people have asked me what the work is about, and a lot of people have really attempted in one way or another to reduce the work to a question of race. I think that it's really unfortunate because I think that there's so many other aspects, so many other dynamic problems, issues, questions, resolves that are really presented in the work, that race is simply a small part of looking at what I think of as a greater human effort on our part. That all of us, of course, are really interested in one way or another with this question, but right now and contemporarily, when we say something about race, when we say that, oh, the work is about race, it tends to really diminish what the work really is, because certainly, for the most part, nobody's really interested in dealing in that terrain right now. I always start with my family. The Polk family, the Mullen family, the Weems family, the Hoons family. My husband is not here with me today, but I thank him for standing by me. We have about 300 relatives here in Portland alone, I think. About 300. It could be a little bit more than that. And that has always been, like a very deep place for me to start. And I started with things like family pictures and stories. It was a way of really mapping and getting to know and understand the dimensions of myself before I could really move on and explore really anything else. I mean, that I had been involved for a long time in photography before turning to my family, maybe about 10 years before turning to my family, but it became a really great jumping off point for me. Before then, of course, I had been looking at all the boys That I knew, like, Robert Frank and Gary Winogrand and all of the men really who really shaped American photography as we understand it contemporarily. And right now what I'm showing you are just many different kinds of images. This is an installation from Spain. From another retrospective or survey show that was put together a couple of years ago. But this returning to documentary, thinking about it, using it as a kind of metaphor, as a way, as an approach to life was absolutely important. Getting to know what those photographers were all about, how they used the camera, to map and to sort out their relationship to the world. That served as an amazing influence for me as a young woman. And I followed those men consistently. And I began to really also understand that documentary was its own particular form of documenting, of describing the world, and that I was really interested in a space that was between that I really wasn't a documentary photographer, that I didn't really want to move through the world as a documentary photographer, that I wasn't interested in going out into the world and capturing the world and bringing it back to my darkroom to unpack in some sort of way. I was interested in something else, a kind of hybrid form. And it was through other artists then who came along in the 80s, people like Barbara Kruger and any number of people that I started paying attention to, who were building, who were making, who were describing and engaging in the world in another kind of way that deeply interested me and that taught me a great deal. The wonderful Roy D. Carava was a great guide and mentor, and we all need mentors. I mean, the one thing that I know at this point is that you just don't get any place in this world without somebody leading the way, without a mentor, without a guide, without support, without assistance, without friendship, without love, without support. And so, so I'm looking at all these other artists and I'm trying to understand myself in context with them. That I don't see myself as an individual artist sort of on an island on my own, but that I really work in context with a number of other artists who are working around similar kinds of issues, trying to describe the world in a certain way, trying to engage it in a certain kind of way. And so it's been really important for me to pay a great deal of attention to what other artists are doing. And for a long time, even now, though I'm getting really lazy. Though I'm sleeping much later. Like for a long time, I got up at 5, and now I'm getting up, at 6:30. You know what I mean? So I'm getting a little lazy, and I'm not sort of, looking at artists in the same kind of way. But I used to get up every morning and spend a long time with other artists, trying to understand something about them and about their practice and how something was made and what something looked like and why they were doing what they were doing. And it didn't really matter to me whether I quote, liked the work or I didn't like the work. The most important thing was that I understood something about the effort of the work, And there's something about understanding and knowing and appreciating the effort that goes into the work that is as important as anything else. Duchamp has fascinated me for a really long time, and I keep coming back to Duchamp in some sort of way in my work, whether I'm using him as a kind of muse, or as a kind of, poetic guise, or this elusive man. But I think this is the first fade, which I love. But keep coming back to certain artists again and again and again. There's something about their own process of making, their own process of acting out in the world and describing the world that's absolutely essential to to me as a person and also to me as an artist. The way in which artists have used themselves to inscribe the world, to engage the world, that it's not simply an abstraction, that it's not simply a set of ideas. It is a physicality, a physical engagement with the world. This idea of laying the body on display, of putting the body on display, of using yourself as the marker for action, I think, is absolutely extraordinary. And artists who have been bold enough to do that again and again and again have always fascinated me. Eleanor Antin, and her, who was Jewish, who decided to paint herself black, to experience notions of blackness in the world. Or conversely, someone like Adrian Piper, who decided to sort of paint herself black and then rub up against people walking down the street in Boston. Touching blackness, or Anna Mandita, who walked so beautifully through the world and who died, of course, in a very tragic way, but whose poetic sense of poetry and poeticness and this laying out and displaying of her body has been absolutely essential also to my understanding of what my possibilities were. Or somebody like, Felix Gonzalez Torres, who is dying of AIDS and who knows that, who decides to build out in the most eloquent way these red and white curtains that really reflected what was going on internally in his own body. And he's moving through these curtains, and he's forcing us to move along with them, to touch what this disease is doing, but poetically, gracefully, eloquently inscribing for us. And so I can't do a talk without talking about what other artists have meant to me, because they've been so important to my development. They're my archive, and they're my friends, and there are, of course, many, many others that I spend a great deal of time considering as well. And then, of course, my own work. I've been really fascinated with color, not color as a metaphor, for a very long time. Not race, but color as a metaphor. When I was growing up, nobody was ever black. People were like blue black or caramel or, red bone. I was called, my grandfather called me red, right? And then he called me fuzzy. And then he called, all kinds of, things were very qualified. Nothing was ever black or white. Things were very specific. And of course, in love with architecture. And fortunately, I've had a chance to do many, many different kinds of projects from, as you will see in this exhibition here in Portland at the museum. There are many, many, many layers and levels to the work, and many ways in which I'm engaged with the practice. A few years ago, I started a little nonprofit. It's called Social Studies, and I do a number of different projects through social studies, and perhaps we'll get to some of those projects. The project that I'm currently working on, Social Studies 101, with a group of kids in Syracuse, New York. Always and forever, I'm no matter what I'm doing, I'm always looking at these ideas about power and about class. Who is in control? What is our relationship to power? What is power? What is the will to power? And how does one challenge that in sometimes the most simple way, the simplest way? And so I've done many, many projects, and I suppose one of the things that I'm always asking myself is, when and where do I enter? What is the nature of the discourse? What is the nature of this thing that I'm engaged with and involved with conceptually and politically and socially? And then how do I engage this very, very, very complicated question in a way that I can? I was talking to a really wonderful woman the other day, one of the trustees here at the museum, and we talked a little bit about what we each do, and that each of us brings what we have to offer, hopefully, to the table. These ideas that, in this piece from 22 million, which uses a rolling pin to say by any means necessary. I think it's here, trying to unpack these early relationships of new forms of making that were laid out so eloquently and splendidly in constructivism, that sort of great form that developed out of and through the Russian Revolution. How do I begin to use those materials and those tools myself? And I was given a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to work with a 20 by 24 Polaroid when I started making 22 million. And some of those works are here on display. And then I also dabbled a little bit in sculpture as well. Most recently, teaching at Syracuse University, I had really wonderful pleasure of working with David Ross, who was the director at the Museum of Modern Art for a really long time. And I've been thinking a lot about art and social engagement, and thinking very much that one of the things that is happening, one of the things that we have to pay more attention to, is the role of the artist and social engagement, what that means. And across the country, there are any number of programs, MFA programs, even MA programs that are developing focused in this area. And so we thought that it might be really important to bring a group of people to Syracuse University and to start to unpack some of this ourselves in the area that we were living in a city like Syracuse, where unemployment is deeply high, where the inner city population is perhaps poorer than the population in Mississippi. Very deep stuff going on, incredible violence taking place, young kids killing themselves for no real reason, gang violence absolutely out of control. And one morning, you know, I was like absolutely exhausted. A couple of years ago, absolutely exhausted. It was a November morning, a snowy morning in Syracuse, and I decided I was going to take the morning off. I was going to take the morning off and have a cup of coffee and read the newspaper in bed. You know, and I get my coffee and I go get in bed and I stretch out. I'm prepared to be there for as long as possible. And I opened the newspaper and there was a child, a 2-year-old baby that had been killed the day before in gang violence. And of course, I immediately got up and I started thinking about the neighborhood that I lived in. I started thinking about this, the question of responsibility, how the neighborhood needed to respond to it. And so I made all of these signs. I just got up and I started making stuff. I made lots of different signs and I put them all over my neighborhood, like a man does not become a man by killing another man. And matchbook covers and calendars and yard signs and lawn signs and billboards, and I just put them all up. And it was a really sort of amazing thing. And people came out of their houses to help me put these signs up around the neighborhood. It was really kind of amazing. And 2 years later, the signs are still up. They fall down, people put them back up. They fall down, people take them and they put them in their own window. And so this sort of idea, you know, that there's a way and actually that we can really involve people in our community became absolutely essential. And then I went on to do a series of billboards activating the entire neighborhood where kids would then go out and photograph them and take them and bring them to other kids. And so the most amazing thing happened just recently. So I made these matchbooks that said, contrary to popular belief, your life does matter. And I sent them all out. You know, I put them in like, you know, big bags and I took them to bodegas and bars and said, just pass these out. People come in, they want a cigarette, you give them these matchbooks. So I bumped into a friend of mine recently. This is really quite wonderful. I bumped into a friend of mine recently and he'd had a meeting with a young man about 1.5 years ago. And now they were reconvening several months back. And he asked them to bring something that had meaning for him. And the young man came back 1.5 years later with this matchbook cover, and he pulled it out, and he said, "This has saved my life." Contrary, just this simple thing, just this simple gesture. So I'm all about doing these things, and I pay for it myself. I don't ask anybody else for any money. I just do it. You know, I figure, it's a pair of shoes. It's a pair of shoes. Right? So it's been very interesting. It's been very fulfilling. And then I put together a really wonderful group called the Institute of Sound and Style, where I work with a group of 26 kids, all of them who are paid, and I introduce them to various things like engineering and recording and graphics and photography and video. And it's been really quite a rewarding and really wonderful experience. When I have time, sometimes I parade around the street, disrupting things. things. And so I decided that, that it might be really important to sell hopes and dreams in a bottle. And, I love 1999. Like you can get a Vegematic for 19.99. And so I sell things for 19.99 often. The thing that's really amazing is that I tried to sell my photographs for $19.99, and I could not. No one would buy them. So I said, okay, well then I'll try to sell them for $1,099, and then I sold a few more. And then I thought, oh well, then maybe I wonder what would happen if we tried to sell them for like $19,099. And then I sold even more. It was like it's very interesting. These ideas, the psychology around money is really fantastic, right? But I thought selling hopes and dreams in a bottle in Harlem for $19.99 would work. And so every once in a while I go out and I try to sell hopes and dreams in a bottle. These are some of the videos, some of the billboards that we also made in the neighborhood that we were responsible for the life of our community. That we were saddened by the violence that was taking place and that was ripping the community apart. And so, I continue to do these as well. And this has been really wonderful. And I also use like my Sunday newspaper, and I put ads in the Sunday newspaper, little tear outs and inserts in the Sunday newspaper and all over, so that I'm always activating spaces. The world is watching you as you fail your family, your friends, and your community. So that, it was a very important way for me to really engage my community and what was going on, to be actively involved in the community, and then, of course, to ask for and to solicit, by virtue of simply being present, the support and the care of others who cared about the same thing but actually didn't know that they had the tools by which to change things themselves or to engage the process of social change. Because that is often as important as anything. How do you engage the process of social change? So this has been, this is like my pet project. I love this project. I will be doing this project in an ongoing way. And a wonderful thing about this project is that people have started coming at me and asking me if they could use aspects of the project to use in their community, whether it's been in Chicago, in LA, in Detroit, in various cities. So it's taking on a life of its own. I started simply thinking about my own little neighborhood, not knowing in some way that it would have the kind of ramifications that it's actually having. So it's been a really important project for me to work on. We built then, finally, towards the end of the first cycle of the project, I thought of building a safe zone and made thousands and thousands of flyers that I then put in various newspapers throughout the city, asking people to post these signs in their windows, a sort of caution sign. And so we've been doing that as well. This, of course, is in preparation for work that we were doing at the Frist. A lot of the work that I've done also has centered around humor, and I think that I've used humor off and on as a way to sort of break through a number of other very difficult things. And as you can see, it says, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And the mirror says, "No, white, you black bitch, and don't you forget it." I really love that so much. This sort of way, humor has always been a way that we use, that we can sort of, humor is this very sophisticated form of seriousness. It is really a way that we socially construct one another and give one another license to critique and play with the other, if not undercut the other. What are the three things that you can't give a black person? A black eye, a fat lip, or a job. So it's fabulous, right? It's really fabulous. But then you know that, 25%, 30% of the black population is underemployed. It's this sort of socially sanctioned way that we encourage discrimination. Really powerful, powerful stuff. When I was living in this town in New England. New England fascinates me. It really does. And I really love it. I love going there. I love looking at America. I mean, I really do. I think America is fascinating. So I was living in this town, and I was working, teaching, trying to really understand, like, really a place for me within contemporary photography, working a lot, reading a lot, working with students, teaching with students, trying to guide them. And then started stumbling upon these ideas about space, the use of a kitchen, the use of a table, the sort of simple use of a very pared down and minimal structure, a space, in order to have a very big discussion about the relationship between men and women, between women and women, between women and their children, between men and their children. It was a really wonderful, wonderful time, a very rich time. And so I made this piece, Kitchen Table, and trying to understand really how to sort of, these pieces are not at all autobiographical, though they're useful as a tool for me, but it's not about autobiography as much as it is an attempt to sort of describe women. To describe women at a social, certain time in their lives, undergoing certain changes and experiences, and raising questions about monogamy and polygamy. And, I always thought that 3 was so much more interesting than 2. Sort of how to bring those things together, play with those ideas, and sort of interrogate the family. And so in this very simple way, this light of interrogation became very important. And again, it was through, I sort of stumbled upon this by making some other photographs that I began to realize that maybe this was a space that I could actually occupy and develop an entire body of work around. And so Kitchen Table emerged out of that process, along with a very interesting text also that runs parallel to it. These kids, I found this. I saw this little girl one afternoon in this photograph riding a bike down the street. I think she was like trying to chase a boy down, and I thought, that's my girl. There she is. And I immediately pulled my car over and spoke to her, and then went to speak to her mother. Just absolutely fabulous. She could have been my child. She was just absolutely wonderful. Again, these sort of pieces emerge out of other pieces. So Robert Colescott, who represented the United States at the American Biennale, the Venice Biennale, sometime in the 90s, asked me to do his portrait. And I thought, this is really interesting that Robert Colescott wants me to do his portrait. Another Northwesterner who has work here in the museum. I was happy to see his painting on view here the other day. And so it was quite wonderful, and I flew out to meet with Robert, and went to his studio, and we made this piece, seduced by one another, yet bound by certain social conventions. You framed me and I framed you, but we were both framed by modernism. And even though we knew better, we continued that time-honored tradition of the artist and his model. And so Colescott, again, was very important to me, because I started thinking, I've been thinking about painting for a long time, but going to visit him opened up another pathway for me. And so when I got home, I was thinking about Colescott, I was thinking about that stuff, and I was thinking about painting, I was looking at painting, I was trying to understand painting. Katie, again, my Aunt Katie, who's here, had been a painter earlier, and I'd always wanted to paint, I'd always wanted to draw, but I never really thought I was very good at it. But I wanted to think about painting. Standing on shaky ground, I posed myself for a critical study, but I was no longer certain of the questions to be asked. It was clear I was not Manet's type. Picasso, who had a way with women, only used me, and Duchamp never even considered me. But it could have been worse. Imagine my fate had de Kooning got hold of me. And I love those paintings. I love those paintings too. But this has been like very interesting because I think in some weird way, I have a deep yearning, a deep longing for a certain kind of acceptance. And I think that a lot of this work has to do with what is left out. What is left out? What is left out? And how to then put it in. So my job is how to put it in, how to put it in, and how to at the same time critique why it's there and why it's been left out simultaneously. And so it's been a very interesting ride for me. From the Africa series, always, playing around with this contestation between men and women, that she was the apple of Adam's eye. Going to Janae, which is not far from Timbuktu, unfortunately, that has been anchored and steeped at the moment in incredible violence. We have to keep a deep eye on Africa. Some things are about to implode there. And if we are not involved, we're going to be sorry. The nature of architecture, the role of architecture, the role of men and women again being played out and teased out in the work. And so I'm there, I'm in Mali, I'm in this amazing place where architectural form is so important. And I started looking and photographing and looking and photographing and thinking, that's interesting. Isn't that fabulous? Right? The architecture tells you who belongs there, right? The specificity of architecture. Now, in Africa, we understand it very, 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 very clearly, but it also, of course, has deep ramifications for the world here as well, right? There are all kinds of male clubs throughout the United States, and clubs for only whites as opposed to Jews and blacks and so forth, right? Inscribed sophisticatedly in the architecture as well. Grabbing, snatching, blink, and you be gone. Looking at the power of architecture and its role in slavery has been very important. And I've used that, and I've gone back to it again and again and again. And there are many pieces to these works, and again, some of them are here, a lot of them are here in this exhibition. Every once in a while, people commission me. I don't get commissioned as much as I used to, which is a bummer because I'm broke. But I actually really love commissions, and they've really given me an opportunity to explore things that I've always been interested in. So when Weston Neff approached me from the J. Paul Getty Museum long ago to do this exhibition for them and to curate this work, it was kind of a wonderful opportunity. And this piece is called From Here I Saw What Happened, and I cried. You became a scientific profile, a Negroid type, an anthropological debate, and a photographic subject. I've always thought that I could end here because it's so compact. You became mammy, mama, mother, and then, yes, confidant. Ha. Descending the throne, you became foot soldier and cook. You became house, yard, field, and kitchen. You became Uncle Tom, John, and Clemens, Jim. Drivers, writers, and men of letters. For your names you took hope and humble. Black and tan, your whipped wind of change howled low, blowing itself smack in the middle of Ellington's orchestra. Billy heard it too and cried strange fruit tears. Your resistance was found in the food that you placed at the master's table. Ha. Born with a veil, you became root worker, juju mama, voodoo queen, hoodoo doctor. Some said you were the spitting image of evil. You became playmate to the patriarch and its daughter. You became an accomplice. And the score for God Bless the Child. Out of deep rivers, mixed-matched mulattoes found their way too. You became the Joker's joke and anything but what you were. Ha. Some laughed long and hard and loud. And others said, well, the only thing a nigga can do for me is to shine my shoes. You became boots and spades and coons. And restless after the longest winter, you marched and marched and marched. And in your sing-song prayer, you asked, well, didn't my Lord deliver Daniel? And so working on this piece was very interesting because it was a sort of way that for me to compact many different things. On the one hand, I was interested in the history of photography, interested in the history of blacks in photography, and something else. And so it was a way of sort of, bringing those things together, really, not only, in photography, but rather in American history. So it was this way of bringing these sort of three things together and compressing them very tightly into a very, very narrow space. I mean, I think that essentially we have 25 photographs, if that, maybe a few more, maybe less. So it was a very important project to sort of tease out a number of ideas and a number of concepts. And then there are pieces then, like Ritual and Revolution, which is upstairs. All of these pieces, I've been working with language and text for so long. My uncle Yusef, who just came in, was very important really to my thinking about writing, because long ago, when I was about 18 or 19 years old, he wrote me one of the most beautiful letters that I have ever received in my life. And his use of language and his power of describing was absolutely essential to me. And though I use words very differently, it was there that I knew the power of writing could be so significant. And so I use it often, language, playing with sound, over and over and over, trying to get at some of these things that I care so much about. In pieces like Ritual and Revolution, where I thought it might be very important, because I was really tired of sort of viewing things linearly. I really don't like that experience so much. I thought that it would be much more interesting to sort of build a work that actually the viewer could actually move through, that they could move through history in a certain kind of way. And so doing these sort of large pieces, this diaphanous cloth, became a way of doing that. And then using sound, sometimes parabolic speakers, if the sound is very localized, became a very important method for doing this. I love the idea that the artist was, that the audience was involved inside the work, that they were in fact a part of the piece. Right? So that no matter where you are actually in the work yourself. You are looking at the work and reading the work, but you actually become a part of that history in a certain kind of way. And so that's been an important thing for me to work with. Fortunately, I've had the opportunity of doing 3 different fiber pieces. One of them, the first one was Ritual and Revolution, which was the first, I made that one in Germany. The second one was for, I think, dealt with was the Jefferson Suite that looks very much at science and DNA. I was very interested in science as a younger woman. And then the third one was the Hampton Project for Williams College that looks at the relationship of Native Americans and African Americans to the university system as it was developed in the South. These ideas of before and after became really important to this idea of education. And once it was realized and understood that Native Americans would never really give up their land easily, was when, of course, they decided to completely eradicate them and to get them, really move them out of the system as much as possible. These ideas of conformity and has been very important to the country. And Jefferson, who was extraordinary in many, many ways for all kinds of reasons, was very important to the way in which Native Americans would be looked at in the country, and African Americans as well. There's really a great piece with about Sally Hemings and Jefferson, about her deep love for him that an artist has done that's really, really quite extraordinary. And finally, the Jefferson family, I think, is sort of getting behind the idea that they have to recognize that, yes, there are Black people in their family. That Jefferson had a deep and abiding love for Sally as well as owning her. The Louisiana Project, some of this is imaged here. A lot of these pieces that are on view, because these pieces are so large, we weren't able to bring a lot of them here, like the silhouette pieces. The silhouette pieces are all maybe 5 feet by 7 feet total, so they're large pieces that are printed on canvas. But we were able to bring some of the black and white material here. And again, this was fortunately a piece that I had a chance to play with, because it was really looking at Louisiana right around the time of its centennial celebration. It was, I think, in 2004, so I was able to go to New Orleans and look at New Orleans, that incredible, incredible city. I'm actually going back on Tuesday. You know, pray for me. Pray for me. Very deep and complicated city, where, the keys to the city are sort of passed between these two predominant crews year in and year out. And at the end of the beginning of, like every serious carnival, is Rex, the major crew, where, these extraordinary balls and galas have taken place, and these women have shipped in their dresses from every major designer from around the world. These girls are not playing. They're not playing, and they do this thing where Rex is, the last major parade to happen, and they're always questioning whether or not the Zulus, will show up on time. They have bones in their noses and afro wigs and grass skirts and all this sort of stuff, right? But Rex can't do its thing until the Zulus have had their parade. And it's this sort of way in which this sort of deep racial divide is really played out in the city. And why, at the end of the day, the key to the city is once again the day before Mardi Gras exchange between these two powerful crews who were saying, yes, all is in order, all is well. The keys to the city have been passed on yet again to the right entities. It's powerful stuff. It's really, really amazing. One of the great festivals, carnivals that they did was one that they invited Charles Darwin to, which was called The Missing Links. And so I decided that I really should play with that idea. And so this is really this group of mass pieces that are a part of Louisiana Project come out of that. The Record Shop Project, I'm always working where I set up a record shop in the main street of a city that was in the process of redevelopment, Beacon, New York, where the Dia Foundation has relocated, one of the, of course, significant art complexes in the United States, looking at the transformation of that city as it is redeveloped, reinscribed by art and also by wealth at this point. Roaming. I was awarded the Rome Prize maybe in 2005, 2006, which is really sort of extraordinary. I'd always wanted to go to Rome. Remember Gidget Goes to Rome? You know, I wanted to be Gidget, you know, 3 coins in the fountain, all of that. That was going to be me, you know? But I didn't get there for a really long time, and I'm really glad. I mean, I had traveled every place, but I did not get to Rome for years. And finally, I decided that I would apply for the Prix de Rome, and was miraculously given it, and went off to Rome, where I worked in Fellini's studio. I was so excited. It was so much fun. And made a film there and worked with this great Italian crew. And the food was amazing. I gained like 20 pounds, you know. And the Italians are just absolutely insane. I mean, everybody thinks they're like really friendly. I mean, like there'd be like all these big fat Italians on my set eating my panini constantly. It was like, what is this man doing? But, you know, this is Giuseppe. He's somebody's uncle, and I had to pay him. That's all there was to it. You know, so I was way over budget. But we had a really great time. And in the process, too, I mean, there was something, you know, it's very interesting, you know, being in this sort of great city. And I'm glad that I didn't go when I was 16, because probably the only thing I would have done was just had sex and fun. You know, this way, at least I was working. And I had a sense that, you know, of what I wanted to do. I knew that I really wanted to pay attention to the architecture of the city, because I really started at some point to really understand the role of architecture and the power of architecture. And, you know, I've been looking at architecture for a long time by now, and been thinking about it. So it was really a wonderful time to go and to really look at this ancient city and its environment, and photograph and think about it. This is Matera, ancient old city where up until, you know, the early 90s, people were still living in caves along the rim of the city. Italy is very complex, you know, and as you go from north to south, it changes very, very dramatically. You know, the Palatine Hills, you know, trying to understand these gates. I had walked and walked and walked and walked and walked, and trying to understand this profound city and the role of the church, the role of the square and the pavilion. What do they mean? And why did you know, the individuals seem so small in comparison, that they should be blessed that they were resting in the arms of the state. Of course, you know, Rome is the first place, you know, Italy is the first place that we start to get like empire, that we start to get the state, that we start to get capital, right? So that it was absolutely perfect that I was there in that place. You know, so, you know, Rome is the only place, you know, that also has a pyramid, you know, north of Africa, you know. And then, you know, then I realized, you know, there was this sort of great section of Rome, the most radical section of Rome, and the only section of Rome that had been bombed during the war was also the most progressive part of the city. San Lorenzo area, the only part that was bombed throughout the whole war. But there, of course, you know, Naples. But I'm talking about the city of Rome itself. I love being in this neighborhood, of walking through this neighborhood and making this photograph one of my absolute favorites. But this idea of, you know, being wrapped up and enveloped and thankful that you were enveloped in the arm of the state was absolutely something that I felt consistently as I moved around this extraordinarily beautiful, you know, Baroque, you know, and Renaissance city. Very, very powerful. And then I was interested also in fascist Rome, right? That Rome that Mussolini was to go on and build, you know, and that was, you know, qualitatively different. And that, you know, for the most part, when I look at what's going on in Rome, I'm not looking really at, what Mussolini was involved in. And so being able to go to that section of the city and really think about that was very important. Hitler would write about, you know, the way in which an architecture needed to function so that the individual would feel absolutely at the mercy of the state. So that he would build these, like, Spear would build these long pathways. There would be this sort of this marble that that you would hear every single time your foot hit that stone. That you were in the wake of power, and that he wanted you to tremble in the wake of power. Well, many people have been the same way. Mussolini, of course, was the same. And they built an architecture that, in one way or another, as amazing as it is, it would reflect that and be used by that. And that interests me. And so I had to sort of explore it, even though people kept asking me. The thing that was really funny about being a sister in Rome was that people kept asking me what I was doing there. And the thing that was fascinating was that I was doing more there than most of them were doing there. They really weren't using the city. They were painting flowers and shit. What are you doing? It was really fascinating. I would run into people that I've seen for years, known for years. Had never, they go to Rome like, once or twice a year. They'd never even mentioned that they went there. And they would ask me what I was doing there. It was really fascinating. This is right around the Jewish ghetto. And I spent a lot of time in the Jewish ghetto photographing there as well. And just as I was finishing up then, because you stumble on things, you really do stumble on things. And so I was working and I was doing all these buildings and architecture. And then one day I sort of stumbled in front of, the National Museum in Rome. And I thought, And so that took me off on a whole other direction. Just as I was finishing up my year, I started photographing and standing in front of museums. So now I stand in front of all these museums. I travel around the world and just stand in front of them. And people are saying, what are you doing? What are you doing in front of my museum? And it's a sort of important way, again, that I sort of use my own self, my own body to sort of mark what a space might mean, what's inside and what's outside. It's very simple, but also I think very eloquent simultaneously. And so every place I go now, I stand in front of museums. I usually bring my camera along. And I stand in front of them, and I think about them, I ponder them. It's an act of engagement, it's a performance, it's a meditation, it's a way of me understanding an architecture and an experience of that architecture, and what that experience of what that architecture might mean to a body that is similar to my own. And I must say that, I'm very, very happy to be here in Portland, and be doing the work that I'm doing, to have this work shown. I think that, I'm not a great artist, but I'm a pretty serious one. And I think that the kind of work that I'm doing absolutely needs to be seen because nobody else is doing it. And they're certainly not doing it in this way. That's not so much to pat myself on the back, but rather to say that I'm beginning to understand more and more, even in my humility, my role as an artist at this historical moment and what that role might mean. Do you understand, JS, John Stewart? So this is the work that I've been doing. I continue to stand in front of museums. I love them. I love museums, but I do question them. The reality is that as far as I know, I can count like the black women artists that I know on a hand and a half. And, and I can count the ones who've had major exhibitions, on one hand, major exhibitions. And so I'm aware of the condition and the circumstance under which I live. I understand what's really going on. I know that museums are changing. I know that museums that are not changing absolutely need to change, that there's a new something that is in the works that has to happen so that we understand really not simply what black artists are doing, but rather what we are engaged in more deeply as human entities, that we are deeply, deeply connected as much as we think that we move along parallel lines. We are absolutely intersecting every step of the way, and that intersection I care about greatly and deeply, and I've decided that it's the one thing that I am going to be pursuing until the bitter end. Oh, I love these little candy morsels of color. They're like little gumdrops. The Africa series, and sound, and sound, and sound, and things that fade and fade, slow fade, realizing that there were all these powerful voices, all these powerful women that had given us tremendous sound by which to live and by which to sort of anchor and ground our lives. And yet they were sort of fading from memory. I turn on a jazz station, it's all become so commercial, so horrible, that for the most part, none of these great voices of sound are really voices that we see, that we hear. And so I wanted to do this piece, a kind of slow fade up and a slow fade down, to pay homage to these amazing women that have been so important in the orchestration of my life. Whether it was Marian Anderson, Catherine Dunham, Lena Horne, Josephine Baker, Dorothy Dandridge, Coco Taylor, Mahalia Jackson, what a voice, Abby Lincoln. So I just think about them. Abby Lincoln has saved me on more than one occasion, just having that music play background to my life. When I go into my studio to work, I go in and there are a group of powerful voices in literature and in music that have saved my life, that I don't know what I'd do if I didn't have them to listen to ground me, to help me through the course of my day. So I feel very lucky. From Nina Simone, I had a great meeting with Nina Simone in Paris. Recently I was in Paris 2 weeks ago, and I didn't even have time to shop. I was really blown away by that. But I realized that I had been in Paris, and Toni Morrison had just been, the day before it had been announced that Toni Morrison, I think most of you know Toni Morrison, it had been announced that she had won the Nobel Prize in Literature. But she was also going to be the guest lecturer throughout France for students. So there was a special party that was going to be held for her, for Toni. And a group of us, Black women who happened to be in Paris at the same time, we were all so excited that she was being awarded this great honor, this great prize. And we dash over to the American embassy, and we walk in the room, and there are all these people standing in the middle of the floor. And in a corner, sitting by herself, was Toni Morrison, sitting alone. And we rushed over, and we ordered, we got it together, right? We got the show on the road. And that was lovely. And we enjoyed Toni for a few hours, and her agent whisked her off, and then we leave and we fall out of the embassy. We're giddy. We're giddy that we've just met Toni Morrison and she's getting this prize. And now we're drunk on champagne and we fall out the door. We just turning out the embassy, showing out. Fall out the door, and just as I get to the door, I hear somebody call my name. Carrie Mae, what you doing in my neighborhood? Well, this is funny. This is hilarious. I'm in Paris. I mean, it's not on, Northeast Killingsworth. And so, I laugh, and we jump in the car with my great friend. I said, we're going with you. And he said, great, because I'm going to see Nina Simone. And so we get to this great club, and we walk in, and the great Nina Simone is sitting by herself. And so I realized that there were a number of women, Hazel Scott, Josephine Baker, amazing women that we have built so much on, who had all gone to Paris, and they were all alone in Paris, and many of them died alone in Paris. Profound and beautiful, and but not recognized anymore for the great contributions that they had made. Working on films, many different videos are here. Afro Chic is here. I think you'll be able to, some of you will be able to hear them now that we are in these sort of, the space isn't so busy, and all of them have music, all of them have sound to them. And so this is another piece also. There are some of these that are here. These are pieces that come from a body of work called Constructing History that were made, I don't know, maybe 2008 or something like that. I'm really not sure the date. But one of the things that I started to recognize at a certain moment, and it's sort of too much to go into at the moment, but I started to recognize the importance of these moments in history, these seminal moments in history that have really shaped out who we are and what we are, that it really shaped us as Americans, as U.S. citizens. And the thing that dawned on me, the thing that was so absolutely sort of phenomenal and crazy, was that the thing that it really made us possible were a series of assassinations that took place in the country. That was the thing that brought me here to this room today, this sort of curious series of horrible events. And it started, of course, with the assassination of JFK, right? And then with Martin Luther. And then with Malcolm, right? And I thought, those were the moments. Those were the moments in the history of our country that really shaped who we were to become, and that is still shaping who we will be. And I thought that that was sort of profound, and I thought it would be really interesting to pull together a group of students and to construct a kind of imaginary classroom where they would then enact that moment, those seminal moments that really shaped who we were. It was a way of me sort of reflecting on history. It was a way of introducing them to history. And it was a way of using our own bodies to participate in this crazy history that has had been so profound and important to the essence of who we were. And it was really kind of amazing because students went on to change their majors. Students that I thought were really weak turned out to be really strong. I mean, what I learned about, these kids, and what I learned about myself, and what I learned about our history has been absolutely amazing through doing this project. I absolutely love this project and would really actually like to do it again. So what I thought we would do, we're going to we're going to jump forward to just this tiny little section. It's about 2 minutes long. It's called Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon, and it's about a woman struggling to get, an aging chick who is struggling to get it together. Can we again sort of pull the house lights down, please, as low as possible?
Girl, you'll be a woman soon. I love you so much, can't count all the ways I died for you, girl, and all they can say is he's not your kind. They never get tired of putting me down, and I never know when I come around what I'm gonna find. Don't let them make up your mind. Don't you know, girl, you'll be a woman
I just love this Playboy bunny who's just too old to get into this outfit. I just think she's so fabulous. You know, the thing that's really interesting is that, you know, these projects, I really do work all the time. And these projects come about in these curious ways. But I've really never thought so much about me, and people ask me all the time about how I've come to use myself in the work, and usually it's because I'm just too embarrassed to ask anybody to help me. So I think that we're going to take just a few comments or questions if you might have some that you really want to answer, and if not, I'm dying to have a martini. Oh, you mean with like from roaming or something like that, any of those pieces? I've been working with the same camera for a really long time. And, you know, I have like Hasselblads and Leicas and all that kind of stuff. But I shoot with an old, beat up, raggedy Rolly that I've had since I was in college, that a girlfriend traded her car for. And I said, you know, no, because this car is going to fall apart next week, and you're going to want this camera back, and I'm not going to give it to you. So I made her sign, you know, like an agreement. And but years later, I still have this camera, and I really do love it. And I like it because of it's raggedy, but it still works, and I love simple things. But also because it has a really beautiful kind of uncoated lens. And so it helps me, it softens the world a little bit. It softens things a little, because it's an uncoated lens, so it gathers light in a very interesting, a different way, as opposed to my Leica or my Hasselblad, where everything is like really, really, really sharp. You know, the Hasselblads are so anal. You know, they really are. So I try to avoid it. I only take it with me on jobs so that people know that I'm serious. You know, it's just my prop. And it's really nice to meet you, by the way. Thanks for saying hello. Are there any other questions? Is there somebody at the podium over there?
I just wanted to say I really enjoyed listening to you. You talked beautifully, and it made me think that you're a dancer as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, since there are no, is there a question over there? Okay.
Hi. When it came to photographing your family, when did you know it was the right time to capture them? And
I'm
you
sorry?
should sit back. Oh. When it came to photographing your family, like in your earlier stages of photography, when did you know when you should capture them and when you should just sit back and enjoy their company? Like instead of bringing your camera out to like capture a moment.
When did I decide that it would be...
When did you decide it was a great time to like, I should probably capture these people versus let me just enjoy my family and our stories and our existence
Oh,
together?
yeah. Oh, when did I make that decision?
Yeah.
Oh, you know, I was, I know that I was in, I started in college. I started doing it in college, and I mean, I think, I'm not really sure how I came about doing it, but I had started doing it. And then I realized that it was really important to do. I had started probably collecting like stories earlier, you know. I'd always been really interested in them, and you know, I have loads of tapes already of, you know, of various family members and stories that I have from their lives, about the lives of our grandparents, my grandparents, Ozzie and Albert Polk, and how they come to Oregon. And so I think that, you know, I probably backed into my family because I think I had probably started looking at African American history, and I'd also started looking at the migration from the South, the migration out of the South after in the 30s and the 40s. So I started looking at that work, and I think that in the process of really looking at that work and thinking about that work, I realized that I really didn't have to go far. Like, it wasn't like I didn't have to do field work in the classic sense. I mean, I could really turn to the story of my own family and how my family decided to make this move to Oregon, and how they made the move to Oregon specifically, as opposed to Chicago or or New York or St. Louis or any of the other places, but all the way to Oregon. That became like a really fascinating story, and something that really that has been very important for me, and I think very important for my family as well.
Did you ever feel like you're exploiting them in any way, or
Exploiting them?
yeah?
No.
Because in my own personal work, I feel like I was exploiting my family.
No. I never felt that way. I've never felt like I've exploited anybody. I think that it's very important to try to get to the truth, aspects of the truth. And as long as you are hopefully dealing with integrity and respect and honesty, I don't believe that, that you can exploit anything that way. So I'm not trying to manipulate anything or use anything for any other ulterior motive than to really celebrate the great success of this loving family.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another question? We'll take like just a couple more and then we'll go party.
So I kept trying to think of some profound question to ask you, and really, honestly, I just want to say thank you for your humility, passion, and inspiration. And we've been studying your work in our class, and it has changed the way I've thought about our culture and how its undercurrents have altered my mind. So I just wanted to let you know I am very grateful to be here and to be able to have listened to you speak.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful afternoon.